Hi, my name is Joe Hennigan. I'm here to talk about campaigning with signs today. The intended audience for this presentation are the people who will actually be displaying signs as well as the candidates themselves. And the first thing that I would like to do is talk about the displayers. You displayers are concerned about placement and laws and disposal practices. And then the candidates are concerned about placement, laws, design, probably more than anything, and disposal practices as well. For placement, the first consideration is single versus double-sided signs. And do you want them 90 degrees to your location, or do you want them straight on? In other words, straight on means that you can only see it looking straight on. If you were driving up the street to see it, you wouldn't see it because it was viewable only from the street, from just being straight on. But it depends on, well, where it's going to be planted. Are there trees nearby? Are there other obstructions? So those are some things to think about. And the best thing is just to plan it and then try driving by it and make sure that all that checks out properly. But many times you only need a single side done. In other words, a white side and then a artwork side. And sometimes you need a double side. So in that case, if you have done only single sides, all you have to do is put two back to back. But double up is a lot more expensive. And the laws begin with the federal sign rules. And recently, as in the summer of 2015, the Supreme Court of the United States issued a ruling that no specific wording may be given to political signage by a municipality, but they still do in some cases, and that's okay. But in general, the Supreme Court wanted all sign treatment to be consistent, whether it was a political sign, a sales sign, or any other kind of sign. And then the municipal laws followed suit. Ken Menzel, General Counsel at the Illinois State Board of Elections, says that the state law mainly regulates campaign signs as they pertain to electioneering. That is, how far the sign is from where people are voting. Like any campaigning, signs in support of any candidate or ballot measure cannot be within 100 feet of a polling place. No sign laws on when to put them up. That is, if it was a year before the actual election, you can put them up then. But there is a law in Naperville that you have 48 hours after the election to take them down. And I think most municipalities informally follow that rule. As far as signs go, at the end of the campaign cycle, you're going to have to get rid of them, unless you want to store them in your house forever. But in general, there are three different kinds of signs. There's the corrugated plastic. The thing that's good about them is they last forever. The bad thing about them is the recycling perspective. The cardboard signs obviously are paper-based and are totally recyclable. There's another kind of a sign where they use a thinner plastic and the plastic is recyclable as well. So those are considerations, and there's a price performance kind of things, but it usually the cardboard ones are cheaper, and they're thick enough where they can survive an election cycle. Probably not several election cycles, but at least one. So those are considerations if you want to keep your signs or just get rid of them right away. And of course, the sign posts, the metal ones, if you put those all together and you put them out in front of your house, they're metal, and the metal scrap people will snarf those up before garbage day. So those are very easy to get rid of, and they get recycled as metal. In Woodridge, permitted signs may be located anywhere on the property, but not closer than 3 feet from the lot line. In other words, not on the easement and not close, not right on that little patch right next to the street. Between 3 feet in height above the grade and 8 feet in height above the grade as well. May not exist on an easement or public property. And I think most of the municipal laws are like that. But if you see them on public property and once or twice they are shown like that, eventually they are removed by the municipality. That is, Woodridge will basically give, like maybe a month or so, and then you'll see them on like maybe along 53, and they'll just take them all down. The link I provided below shows the exact rules. In Lisle, signs shall not be posted in the village right-of-ways, parkways, or easements, just like you saw for the other two. Do not attach signs to utility poles, street or traffic signs, or lights. Any sign must be located on private property with the owner's permission. In residential areas, only real estate, garage sale, or other temporary signs are allowed without a permit. So you don't need a permit for a political sign. Time limits and size vary. Please call the Community Development Department at 630-271-4150 for additional information. The one thing about all of these rules is they're not really enforced too tightly. If there's complaints, then they tend to react to the complaints, but in general they don't enforce the rules that much. So you will see occasionally somebody with a huge sign someplace and it sits there. So if you want it out of there, you have to complain about it. So for Naperville, the city's website outlines its procedures for addressing violations. Illegally placed signs in the city right-of-way, which is what we've said for the other towns as well. Illegal signs based on size, individuals and/or campaigns that continue to violate the ordinance will get citations. And here's a number to call as well. In practice, they're not enforced. So candidates, what do you actually want to say on the sign? And the trade-off is putting lots on the sign or the legibility. That is, if it's very legible, that's a good thing, especially when someone's driving by at 30 miles an hour versus density. You want to say, it's so tempting to say a lot of things, but resist that temptation because you want people to be able to read it. Okay, so when you design your signs, there are things to consider like color, font, text density, font size, and then if you want to use some icons. Sometimes the icons help people remember you and differentiate you, but the problem with icons is they take a lot of room. Okay, color. One of the main things to think of in color is nighttime, and usually white on a dark background is the most legible thing there is. But other colors sometimes differentiates you from the pack. Most people use red, white, and blue as sign colors, so you may want to consider picking a color set that's different. But again, pick something that's that you can read at night, and that's usually white letters on a darker background. And you can see here on this slide what some of the colors look like: green or yellow or brown or orange. There's a guy by the name of Ben Donahauer, and he wrote this big paper about the psychology of color and how it contributes. The fonts are real important because there are basically very readable fonts close up, but when you're far away, you want typically a bold font or something really fat, because far away you can read fat much better than you could read thin. And here are some examples about what different candidates have used, like Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, Hillary, and Bernie Sanders. They all have special approaches. And what they're trying to do is give you a signature, and they're trying to make themselves look different than anybody else based on their font selection. And then text density. I mentioned that before, but I'll mention it again. What you need to do is consider what you're putting on that sign for somebody who's driving by at 30 miles an hour. And the trade-off is legibility versus density. The candidate's name and the office desired, maybe a catchphrase, and maybe a website name. You put the website at the bottom. They can't see it at night, but when they drive by during the day, maybe they can see it. Size, trade-off. Again, legibility versus density. I know I've said it before, but I can't emphasize that enough. Remember the name, remember a position that they're running for, like County Board 3, for example. And people may not care about the fact that it's 3. Maybe if you just put County Board, that's sufficient enough. And again, drivers are usually drive by at 30 miles an hour, so take that into consideration. Icons. People tend to be neutral on icons, but if you're really pushing the fact that you're a particular party, then by all means put the icon up there, like a donkey. In the case of the judge, you might have like a balance scale. Okay, here's some examples. This is a red, white, and blue sign, and if you look out there when people are running, this is the most pervasive, and it doesn't differentiate based on color too much. This example is black and white. It's easy to read. Maybe it's not going to be so easy to read at night, and at night you're not going to see the image of that face that well. So I would say that this is a poor text density example. This sign, although it's fine in the daytime to read, at nighttime you're going to have a hard time reading the last name Adams. Can you read this at night going by at 30 miles an hour? And this one is yellow and black. So this is not the red, white, and blue. So this is going to be more memorable. It's different and it's extremely legible. It's very easy to see this. Here's an example of a crowded corner, and this reinforces my point of the use of red, white, and blue. 80% of what you see here is red, white, and blue. And this one was done in Woodridge recently, and it's fine if you can walk up and read it, but if you're driving by at 30 miles an hour, it's just going to be a big blurb text and you won't be able to read it. They could have gotten rid of the date. They could have said Woodridge trustees, and the fact that they say it's time to re-elect, well, it's a campaign sign. I think people can figure out that it's time to re-elect. So that's something to think about. They could have removed a lot. They like the clock thing there because that's the Woodridge, in the Woodridge Center they had that clock, so they thought that would look pretty. But to me, having that clock leaves less geography to put a big font so you can see that better. Again, poor text density. So the last thing that you have to consider, and actually it's even the first thing, do they work? The shorter answer is sort of, said Jonathan Krasno, political science professor at Binghamton University in New York. And this is his article about whether signs work or not. The one thing signs do is they put that name in somebody's mind. So when they're at the poll and they're voting, if they see a name that they've seen before, then they'll say, oh, I remember that name. I don't remember where or how it was used or anything, but I remember the name. And if the other guy that you're running against didn't do that, then he's a non-remembered name. So having somebody remember your name is a very good thing. Well, thank you very much, and best of luck with your campaigns.